Hi, welcome back to Bookish Brits. So as this is my last post for December, I decided that I wanted to do something a little bit festive. So I've got my festive hair thingy and I decided to decorate my bookcase appropriately for the festive season. Beyond that, I was a little bit stumped for content. So the lovely Faye, who you will see again on Friday, tagged me in the Winter Wonderland book tag over at her personal YouTube channel, A Daydreamer's Thoughts. This was a book tag originally started by Jack Eats Books. I will post the links to both of those videos so you can take a look at those. The first question is, what book is so happy and sweet that it warms your heart? So originally I thought, oh, this is going to be super easy. I am very much a fan of warm, comforting, maybe slightly predictable reads, particularly with a very heavy thread of romance. And then I realised that there were far too many on my shelf to choose from. So I've decided that I'm going to go with my most favourite book, and I've mentioned this before, and it would have to be Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. Not only is it obviously well renowned for being a very famous romance, but it's also one that I have read very many times before. It is just a beautiful love story. It's witty and funny, and I have been in love with the story ever since I first saw Colin Firth coming out of the pond in his wet shirt. But anyway, this is actually one of 4 copies of this book I own. So I have this beautiful hardback, which I actually got for Christmas last year. I have this beautiful Lizzie Bennet Diaries inspired copy of Pride and Prejudice with a foreword by Hank Green. Does he? Really? Oh. I have the very first copy that I ever bought back in '95. After watching some of the BBC adaptation, I decided that I needed to read ahead and find out what happened next. And this is a very dog-eared copy and has been read many, many times. And I also have a digital copy on my Kindle app. So, obsessed much? Yeah. The second question is, what is your favourite book with a white cover? Now, I've been through my bookshelf and there are a few books with white covers. Most of them are romantic reads. I wanted something a little bit different, and so I have selected my copy of The Knife of Never Letting Go by Patrick Ness. This is an absolutely amazing book. It was so different from anything I'd ever read before. It was so heart-rending, so incredibly sad in places. We won't talk about that today. But an amazing read. I definitely recommend everybody taking a look at this. You're sitting in a nice comfy chair, wearing a onesie. I don't think so. With a lovely warm hot chocolate. That I can get behind. But what monster read are you reading? Okay, so I didn't know initially whether I was going to take this literally as in a read with monsters, or whether we're talking about a mammoth read as in the size of the book. I have decided to go with both of these options, and I have selected Department 19 Battle Lines, which is the 3rd book in the Department 19 series by UKYA author Will Hill. The reason I've selected this is that not only is it literally about monsters, it is about a secret government department which keeps the earth safe from monsters, but particularly vampires, and particularly the main man himself, Mr. Vlad the Impaler. It is also a mammoth book. Now I can't show you my copy because it's on my iPad and I am filming on it right now. But according to Goodreads, it's over 700 pages long. Now, this is the 2nd book in the series, and this is 703 pages. It started snowing, so you've decided to have a snowball fight. Which fictional character would you love to have a snowball fight with? So originally I went through all of my fictional crushes, deciding which of these characters I would most like to meet and therefore have a snowball fight with. And then I decided to think a little bit more tactically, and who would I be able to beat in a snowball fight? And then after all that, I thought the best thing would be to choose the person who I'd had the most fun with, who I think who would go into it most wholeheartedly, who I could also imagine making snow cones with, and snow angels, and in the end I decided that the person I would most love to have a snowball fight with is Luna Lovegood from the Harry Potter series. Sadly, your fire begins to go out. Which book would you tear the last few chapters out of and throw onto the fire? Okay, so this is a tricky one, because your first instinct is to pick a book that you haven't enjoyed, or particularly haven't enjoyed the ending of, and sacrifice those to the flames. I decided to actually go for a book that I completely adored, and the reason that I have chosen Clockwork Princess is because I would have to burn the epilogue, and not because it wasn't amazing, but because that final chapter of this book probably gave me more feels, I felt more emotions, I cried bucket loads of tears, I smiled and chuckled, and I pretty much went through a whole gambit of emotions in that final chapter, probably as much as I did reading the entire series preceding it. So it's not that I don't love that chapter, because it was absolutely amazing, but purely for the ugly, snot bubble producing qualities of the epilogue of The Clockwork Princess, I would have to designate that for the fire. And finally, question 6. Which book is so close to your heart that you would gift it to someone this Christmas who hasn't read before and wants to start reading? For me, that would depend entirely on the age of the person I was talking to. It would also depend on their particular likes. I'm going to just go with someone my own age, someone in my social circle who perhaps hasn't read before. The book that I would give them to encourage them to start reading would be Easy by Tamara Webber. The reason for this is, one, I wanted to pick a contemporary book because I think that it's probably the easiest genre to get into. I think people have a lot of set ideas about speculative fiction, so sci-fi and fantasy and dystopian, and that's not necessarily everybody's cup of tea, so I think you're pretty safe with a contemporary. I love this story, it's beautifully written, it is emotional, but it's ultimately a feel-good book, and also probably because it is pretty much the only book that I've managed to reread since I started blogging. And not only did I reread it, I reread it within 2 weeks of my original read. So for me that makes it a standout book and one that I would recommend. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to my answers. If any of you would like to take part in the Winter Wonderland book tag, the details are below. But in the meantime, I would like to tag my fellow bookish Brit, Debbie, because I'd love to know her answers. I'd also like to tag Pruedence and Kerrie from Read and Repeat. Thank you very much for listening. Have a fantastic Christmas, and I shall see you in the new year.